There are 5 things I no longer do as a woman of God. Every one of them felt harmless at the time, and some of them even looked like discipline or like faith. But looking back, they were quietly keeping me stuck. Number one is something you're probably still doing right now. You may not even realize it. For a long time, I would do what I wanted to do, and then afterward, I'd ask God if it pleased Him. I want to talk about why that order matters more than most of us realize. This habit alone can quietly keep you stuck in the same cycle for years. Here's my point. Asking God after you've already acted isn't really asking. It is asking for permission you already took without ever waiting for an answer. Some people say God already knows our heart, so the order doesn't matter. But if the order didn't matter, we wouldn't feel that tug of guilt right before we do the thing anyway. That tug is Him. I remember testing God on whether it was okay for a Christian to play the lottery. I convinced myself it could be how He'd bless me financially, so I bought the ticket first. Conviction hit me straight in that line. Standing in that lottery line, conviction hit me. Watching people from my job, people who knew I was a Christian, stand there right beside me. That's when I stopped. That's when I started praying and asking for permission after the fact. But I'd already decided. I was just looking for God to bless a decision I'd already made. That experience taught me the difference between real obedience and asking for cover. Now, I ask God first before I move, not after. That's what I do now. But asking first only works if you're willing to obey immediately once He answers. The second thing I no longer do is linger when God tells me to stop or stay away from something or someone. I used to wait until I felt ready, until it felt comfortable, until the timing suited me. I want to talk about why that waiting is its own kind of disobedience. And here's my point. Delayed obedience is disobedience. It just looks more spiritual. Some people would say waiting is wise, that we should take time to be sure. And there's truth to that when you're genuinely unsure. But when you already know what God said and you're just waiting until you feel like doing it, that's not wisdom, that's stalling. I used to do that. God would show me something to walk away from, and I'd sit with it for days, sometimes weeks, doing it my way, in my timing instead of His. Every time I did that, I watched the situation get harder to leave, not easier. And many times the circumstances turned out negative, where whether we're breaking off or moving on from that friendship would have been peaceful and pleasant, it then begins to get very difficult and uncomfortable. Now, when He shows me something, I move the same day, moment in time. And every single time, it's been easier, much lighter than I expected. But obedience isn't only about what you do, it's also about what you say. The Bible tells us that life and death are in the power of the tongue. For a long time, what I said in private didn't match what I said in public. I want to talk about that gap because it's wider in most of us than we're willing to admit. Here's my point. Your private words carry as much weight as your public ones. God hears both. Some people think what's said in a private prayer, especially something contrary or doubtful, doesn't count because no one else heard it. But God isn't grading your speech by who's in the room. I used to say things in my prayer time that contradicted what I knew His word said about me, and then walk into a room and act like I had it all figured out. That gap between the two versions of me was exhausting to maintain. Words spoken in private are still words. They still carry power, whether anyone claps for them or not. Now, I try to make sure my private words and my public words agree. That agreement is where real peace started showing up for me. Once my words lined up, the next thing I had to face was whether my life actually matched what I was saying. The fourth thing I no longer do or perform. Used to want people to think I had it all together, even when I didn't. I want to talk about why that performance always ends up costing more than it's worth. You cannot say one thing and live another and call that faith. That's not faith, that's a show. Some people say someone struggles privately, and that's true. Struggle is normal. But hiding the struggle while performing certainty in front of others is the part that isn't. I've hated hypocrisy since I was young. In my early teens, I actually wanted to leave the church I grew up in because of the hypocrisy I saw there. So when conviction hit me, I didn't wait to figure out how to explain myself to anyone. I just stopped. If I fell into sin, I used to hide it. Now I confess quickly because hiding it never made it stronger. It just made me lonelier. I never lied to people outright, but I lied through what I let them believe about me. And I stopped doing that too. If I say I'm going to do something, I do it because my word matters in private and in public. Once I stopped performing, I stopped carrying the weight of pretending. But none of this holds together if you're not also guarding what you allow into your mind. The last thing I let go of has to do with what I watch, what I allow near me, and what I do when no one is looking. I want to talk about this one directly because silence around it has kept a lot of women stuck. This isn't about shame, it's about protecting your walk with God. What you watch shapes what you want, and what you want shapes what you do. Some people say what you watch in private doesn't affect your relationship with God because no one else sees it. God sees it, and it shapes your mind whether anyone else knows it or not. I stopped watching sexually explicit content because I know it stirs things in us that we're not supposed to be acting on outside of the design of God. I also let go of a private habit that came from the same place because my mind needed to be on the right thing, not fighting itself. I was in a relationship for nearly 18 years, and there came a point where I could no longer pray or feel the presence of God without feeling conviction and sin. What made me finally walk away was God asking me one question: who's your first love? I knew nobody but God would be there for me no matter what, so I chose Him. Protecting my mind changed how I showed up in every other area of my life. If you walk away from this video with one thing, let it be this: growth as a woman or man of God isn't about doing more. It's about being honest enough to let go of what's quietly holding you back. If this spoke to you, like the video, share it with the woman or a man who needs to hear it, and leave a thoughtful comment below. I want to know which of these 5 is the one you've been struggling with the most. And is there something God has been asking you to obey immediately that you've been putting off? I'm Deborah, and this is Family Still Matters. Because family still matters, our integrity, our faith, and discipline are what holds the family together. Thank you. As always, I want the last word you hear to be God's word and not mine. Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken than the fat of rams. That comes out of the first book of Samuel, chapter 15, verse 22.